Snow was falling the night my mother called me the most useless child she ever had. I remember the dining room glowing with gold light, the smell of pine and bitterness mixing as neatly as the china on her table. She didn't know that the phone in my hand held 3 years of proof, every secret transfer, every favor she'd forgotten. I wasn't the failure she thought. I was the one quietly funding her world. What happens when the family accountant finally closes the bank, when the quiet one decides to speak? Stay to find out how a daughter reclaims her worth, one truth at a time. Like, share, comment, and subscribe to us. We always appreciate the time you have with us. Let's begin. Snow falls the way it does in postcards, soft, deliberate, forgiving. Each flake lands against my windshield like it's trying to cushion the drive I've made every December since I left home. I park at the edge of my parents' circular driveway, the one lined with perfect blue spruces and a glowing reindeer display that probably costs more than my monthly rent. Through the window, the Whitaker house looks exactly the same as it did when I was 10, two-story colonial wreath, on every window a golden W monogram on the door. It's picture perfect, the kind of house people point to and say they must have it all together, and maybe they do. I just happen to know the cost of keeping that illusion alive, $41,980 over 3 years. But who's counting? I check my lipstick in the rearview mirror, steady my breath. Just tell them about the promotion, I whisper. Senior brand strategist at 29. They can't dismiss that. Ben texted me an hour ago. You got this, Rye. Proud of you already. He means it always does. He teaches history at a public high school in Denver, the kind of job Mom calls sweet but limited. She's allergic to anything that doesn't sound impressive at a cocktail party. I grab the stack of carefully wrapped gifts from the back seat. Nothing extravagant but personal, and the smallest box of all sits in my purse, a gold band I bought on installment for Ben, hidden until the right moment. The irony isn't lost on me. I buy gifts I can barely afford for people who never notice what I give. Dad opens the door before I knock. Riley. You made it. His hug is quick but warm, and he smells like cedar and coffee. He glances over his shoulder before I can answer, already pulled toward whatever storm Mom's brewing in the kitchen. She's just stressing about the roast, he says. Which is Dad speak for she's in one of her moods. Inside, the living room hums with forced festivity. My brother Evan stands by the fireplace, wine in hand, talking about his new orthopedic practice expansion. My sister Courtney is perched on the couch in a red sweater dress, angling her phone for a photo that will later be captioned, "Family time #blessed." Grandma June sits near the window knitting something soft and blue. She smiles when she sees me, that rare kind of smile that makes you feel like you're the only person who matters in the room. Then there's Mom. Lydia Whitaker turns from the kitchen island like she's stepping into a stage light. "Oh, Riley," she says, scanning me up and down. "That color really drains you. You should have worn the navy dress I got you." No hello? No Merry Christmas. Just the usual critique disguised as care. "Merry Christmas to you too, Mom." I set the gifts under the tree. The decorations haven't changed in 20 years, the same crystal angels, the same framed photo of Evan's med school graduation front and center on the mantle, while my marketing degree and all hangs in the hallway like an afterthought. Dinner starts with small talk and ends with subtle wounds. Evan's boasting about his clinic. Courtney's gushing about an influencer partnership. Mom basks in reflected glory like she's the CEO of Whitaker Enterprises. Dad carves the prime rib with surgical precision, his eyes fixed anywhere but on the conversation. I sip my wine, trying to time the right moment to mention my promotion, the one I worked 18-hour days for. When there's a lull, I clear my throat. I wanted to share some news. I start smiling politely. Altitude marketing made me senior brand strategist last month. Evan nods absently. Courtney doesn't look up from her phone. Mom tilts her head, her version of approval. "Well, good for you, dear. Though I do hope that means you'll start thinking long-term, buying property. Maybe Ben's nice, but ambition matters in a marriage." The fork slips in my hand. Ambition matters. She laughs lightly, that perfect social laugh that doesn't reach her eyes. Don't be sensitive, Riley. You've always been our creative one. It's just, well, some of us contribute in more measurable ways. Her gaze flicks toward Evan and Courtney. Your siblings, for example. The air goes still. Even Dad's carving pauses mid-slice. Grandma June's knitting needles click once, twice, then stop. I hear myself ask. Measurable Mom shrugs, taking a delicate sip of wine. You know what I mean. Evan's saving lives. Courtney's moving up in a prestigious firm, and you, she waves a manicured hand, make things look pretty. Don't misunderstand, sweetie. It's useful in its way, but not. She doesn't need to finish. The word lands anyway. Useful. I feel something small inside me snap. Not rage exactly, something colder, quieter, like frost forming on glass. I look around the table, Evan absorbed in himself, Courtney scrolling, Dad pretending the turkey needs his full attention, Grandma June watching me with a kind of sad knowing. Memories rush in sharp and fast as Sleet writing checks for Mom's car payment, the year she forgot to budget for Christmas gifts, covering Courtney's bar prep when she maxed her cards, paying Dad's deductible after his knee surgery. Every temporary favor, every "I'll pay you back," soon dissolved into silence. My generosity turned into expectation. My kindness mistaken for weakness. I breathe once, twice. Resilience, that's what Ben always calls it. You're tougher than you think, Rye. But I'm tired of toughness that only serves everyone else. I want freedom. One unburdened decision that belongs to me. I glance at Grandma June. Her eyes meet mine, soft but certain, and in that look I hear everything she can't say aloud. It's time. So I set down my fork, the sound clean and final against the china. My pulse slows steady as the ticking clock above the mantel. Snow keeps falling outside, silent and perfect. And in its reflection on the window, I see my own face, calm, not broken. Under the table, my phone screen lights up with my banking app. Rows of transactions blur together, rent transfers, Venmo notes, account withdrawals labeled Mom Urgent or Evan Loan. Proof of a lifetime of being useful. I look up, meet my mother's perfectly composed expression, and say, "Let's be useful then." The sound of silverware scraping china fills the silence after my words. Snow still drifts beyond the window, catching the porch light like confetti for a celebration no one's enjoying. I rest my phone on the table, face up, the blue glow reflecting in the crystal glasses. Since we're discussing usefulness, I say evenly, let's review some data. Mom's brows lift. Riley, this isn't the time. It's exactly the time. My thumb scrolls through transactions. I don't raise my voice. I don't need to. Numbers speak louder than pleas ever did. December 8th. I begin $1,150. Payment to Whitaker Leasing. Your Lexus Mom. Remember, you called it a temporary loan. Her wineglass pauses midair. That was November 15th. I continue overriding her. $2,750. Deductible for Dad's knee surgery. Paid directly to the clinic. I look at him and he looks down, suddenly fascinated by his plate. October 2nd. I go on. $3,200. Courtney's bar exam prep premium package. Courtney laughs too loudly. Oh, come on, Riley. That was years ago. August 24th, I say. $4,500 wire transfer to Evan Whitaker. Student loan payoff so he could qualify for his practice financing. You called me crying that day, remember? Evan's jaw tightens. We're family. Families help each other. I agree, I say quietly. Families help each other. But this was one way. I scroll through the totals, the room's warmth pressing against me like a physical weight. 3 years. I continue, my voice steady, though my hands tremble slightly. $41,980. 0 repayments. 0 interest. 0 acknowledgement. The words hang there naked and undeniable. The only sound is the crackle of the fireplace. Mom's practiced smile falters at the edges, cracking like old paint. Dad shifts in his chair, guilt radiating from him in waves. Courtney crosses her arms, feigning boredom. Evan drinks. Grandma June breaks the spell first. "Could someone get me a glass of water?" she asks, her tone light, almost casual. It's a small mercy, a cue for me to pause. I nod, grateful for the reprieve. I retrieve a tumbler from the counter, fill it slowly from the tap. Those 15 seconds of motion steady my pulse. When I return, Grandma's eyes meet mine with quiet strength. She takes the glass, sips, and gives me the slightest nod, permission to keep going. I sit down and set my phone beside my plate. "I'm not angry," I say softly, "but I'm done pretending this is normal." Mom exhales through her nose, recovering her composure like someone slipping back into an old costume. "You're being dramatic, Riley. Those were family emergencies." "Every month was an emergency," I reply. "And every emergency was mine to fix." Courtney smirks. "Nobody forced you. You could have said no." A laugh escapes me before I can stop it, not cruel, just incredulous. "You're right. Nobody held a gun to my head. Just emotional guilt and promises of finally being enough." Evan leans back, voice low and defensive. "I told you I'd pay you back when I could. You've opened a new clinic," I remind him. "You have staff. You have a second car. You never even brought it up." Dad finally speaks, his voice small. "Riley. Sweetheart, you know we appreciate everything you've done." "No, Dad," I interrupt gently. "You don't. Appreciation would have meant you stopped asking." The words hit him harder than I expected. His shoulders fold inward, his carving knife clinks against the plate as he sets it down. Mom's voice sharpens. "This tone is unacceptable in my house." I glance around the table. "That's part of the problem, Mom. It's always your house, your narrative, your control. I'm just the support staff who keeps it all running." Evan mutters, "Here we go." I turn toward him. "You think this is about resentment?" "It's not. It's about balance. I gave because I wanted to believe I mattered, but I can't keep funding the illusion that I do. The quiet that follows is thick and brittle." I look at Grandma June again. Her lips pressed together, proud and sad all at once. She sees at this moment where something long buried finally exhales. I fold my napkin, carefully smoothing the edges before I speak. "The Bank of Riley," I say, and the name lands like a verdict is closed. For a heartbeat, no one moves. Then Evan scoffs, the sound harsh and humorless. "You make it sound like we're criminals," Courtney mutters. "Maybe you should loosen up, Riley. You've always been so serious," Dad murmurs. "Please, everyone." But Mom's gone cold. The frost in her expression could freeze the room. "If this is your idea of gratitude, I pity you." I meet her stare head on. "I don't need pity. I need boundaries." She leans back, crossing her arms, her jewelry catching the light. "You've always dramatized everything. If you want to cut ties over money, that's your choice. But don't come running back when you realize what you've lost." "I'm not cutting ties," I say. "I'm cutting obligations that never should have existed." The moment feels final, like the last card in a long-rigged game being turned over. I don't feel victorious. I just feel lighter. Grandma June clears her throat, a small, deliberate sound. "Well," she says, "perhaps next Christmas we can talk about gratitude for real." Her words land softly, but the impact is unmistakable. I pick up my wine glass, take a measured sip, and let the silence stretch. The hierarchy at this table has shifted. I can feel it in the way Dad's eyes dart between us, in Mom's tight jaw, in the nervous flutter of Courtney's fingers against her napkin. Then, just as I think the night has reached its end, my phone vibrates beside my plate. A soft buzz, almost polite. I glance down. The notification banner glows against the dark screen email sent concerning Riley's betrayal. Underneath, a list of recipients, aunts, uncles, cousins, even my old boss. My heart stutters once, then steadies. I look up at my mother. She's smiling again now, small and sharp, the kind of smile that says she's already rewriting the story. The snow outside keeps falling quiet as ash. The next morning, my phone won't stop vibrating. Texts, missed calls, notifications stacked like falling dominoes. The first thing I see is the subject line concerning Riley's betrayal, the same one that blinked on my screen last night. I open it because denial is worse than confirmation. Lydia's writing is perfectly polished as always. It breaks my heart. It begins to see our daughter behave so selfishly, twisting acts of family generosity into false accusations. She calls me unstable, says I've misused funds entrusted to me for family purposes, and even implies that Ben's sweet, mild, endlessly patient Ben has been influencing her toward resentment. Her language drips civility. Every line ends with a dagger wrapped in lace. The BCC list is a social minefield, extended family, former coworkers, even my boss Amelia. The email ends with a sanctimonious flourish. Please pray for our family during this time of confusion and grief. Confusion, grief. As if I'd died and taken their reputation with me. By 9 a.m., the fallout spreads faster than I can scroll. My agency's HR flags the message under brand risk. I walk into the office to find two colleagues staring at their screens, whispering. Someone's printed the email for review. At the break room coffee pot, a junior associate murmurs, "Family drama, huh?" and then flushes when I meet her eyes. At lunch, my phone buzzes again. Grandma June. "I'm so sorry, honey," she says quietly. "The church ladies are in a tizzy. Lydia sent it to the prayer chain." "Of course she did," I whisper. "They mean well." Grandma sighs. "But you know how gossip dresses itself up as concern." By evening, my neighborhood Facebook group is humming too. Someone posts thoughts on helping adult children who mistreat their parents, accompanied by a blurry stock photo of a broken family. 10 comments and someone writes, "Isn't that the Whitaker girl from Arvada?" The thread fills with strangers, offering opinions about my soul. I turn off my phone. For a while I just sit in the half-dark of my apartment, blinds closed, watching the snow fall through the gaps. I should feel furious, but what I feel is hollow, a quiet grief for the version of me that still tried to please them. Ben comes home from school, loosens his tie, reads my face in one glance. "It's bad, huh?" "It's coordinated," I say. She didn't just lash out, she wrote it like a press release. He sits beside me on the couch. "Then you respond like a professional, not a daughter. That's your strength, Riley." His words settle something inside me. He's right. I can't fight a public narrative with emotion. I have to build my own case when they can't twist. I open my laptop and begin pulling records, screenshots of transfers, PayPal receipts, Venmo notes, copies of emails where Lydia thanked me for covering just this once. I build folders by year, label them neatly. 2019, furnace. 2020, medical. 2021, court. 2022, remodel. I cross-check dates with pay stubs and bank statements. Every number has a purpose. Every favor has a timestamp. By midnight, the spreadsheet spans 3 tabs, total $41,980. Still, exact to the cent. I color code categories: red for mom, blue for dad, green for siblings. It looks almost beautiful order pulled from chaos. Then I create a new folder on my desktop and name it Family Boundaries. It feels ceremonial, like sealing a vault. For once, I'm not organizing for their convenience. I'm organizing for my protection. The next day, my phone rings at 10:37 p.m. "Dad." His number lights up like an old song you haven't decided whether to skip or not. I answer anyway. "Riley," he says, voice low and tired. "Your mother's been crying for 2 days. I doubt that I say gently. She feels attacked. And I didn't know about those numbers. Honestly, I didn't. I thought they were small things here and there. 41,000 isn't small, Dad." He exhales, the sound brittle. "Look, sweetheart. Maybe just talk to her. Fix this misunderstanding before it gets worse. It's not a misunderstanding, I say. It's a pattern. He goes silent. The kind of silence that carries regret, but no courage. When he finally speaks, it's barely a whisper. I don't know how to stop her when she's like this. I know, I say. That's why I have to. When I hang up, I stare at my phone a long time before turning it face down. The weight of his helplessness used to crush me. Now it only clarifies things. You can't save someone who benefits from your silence. 2 days later, an email arrives from HR. Subject meeting request, brand and reputation review. The message is polite but firm. Please come prepared to discuss the situation involving external communications about your family. External communications. The phrase makes me want to laugh and scream at once. Lydia has turned my boundaries into a PR crisis. Ben reads the email over my shoulder. You'll bring the receipts, right? All of them. Good, he says. Then tell them what you told your family. Facts, not feelings. That night, I rehearse in front of the mirror the way I used to before client pitches. My reflection looks steadier than I feel. This isn't a scandal I practice. It's a family pattern misrepresented as a moral one. Outside, the snow stopped falling. The city glows under streetlights clean and hushed, as if waiting for something to break the quiet. I take one last look at my organized folder at the neat columns and color-coded truth that's finally mine to control. Tomorrow I'll walk into that HR office and defend my name not as Lydia Whitaker's daughter, but as Riley Jane Whitaker, professional adult, and witness to her own story. The email from HR ends with 3 words that echo in my mind long after I shut the laptop. Come prepared. The copper finch is my sanctuary, quiet corner, soft jazz, the smell of cinnamon and espresso. It's where I go to breathe, to write campaign briefs, to forget the noise my family makes. This morning, the air feels steadier than it has in days. I've survived the HR meeting, kept my job, and even earned a quiet, good composure from my boss. I just want one peaceful hour with my laptop and my lavender latte. The bell over the door jingles. I don't look up right away. Then I hear her voice. There you are. Lydia. I freeze halfway through typing a sentence. She's standing 10 feet away, immaculate as always in a camel coat and pearls that catch the morning light. And beside her, Courtney eyes puffy face, already performing grief for an invisible audience. My stomach sinks. They've found me. Before I can speak, Lydia strides over, placing a manicured hand dramatically over her chest. You've ignored every call, every text, she says loudly, just shy of theatrical. Heads turn. Do you have any idea what this is doing to your father? I blink. Mom, this is not the place. She ignores me, voice rising. You humiliated us, Riley. You twisted our generosity into an attack. Courtney sniffles her mascara, just beginning to smudge. You've destroyed this family. The cafe quiets. Conversations hush, spoons freeze mid-stir. They've done this on purpose, chosen my refuge, counted on public sympathy. My blood thuds in my ears, but I keep my voice low. You're making a scene. Because you forced one, Lydia's volume jumps an octave, tremor timed perfectly to draw more eyes. I raised you better than this. Courtney lets out a small sob. I can't sleep. Mom barely eats. You've broken her heart. I glance at the barista behind the counter. Lena, the owner's niece. A church deacon's kid who recognizes my family name. She gives me a quick questioning look. You okay? I nod faintly, then push back my chair. Let's sit, I say, steady as a metronome. If you're going to accuse me of things, we might as well do it with caffeine. They hesitate, thrown off by my calmness. I walk to the counter, order 3 coffees, 2 black, 1 oat milk latte, and pay with exact cash. When they arrive, I carry them to the table and slide one across to each of them. This, I say, is the last bill I'll ever pay for you. Courtney stares at the coffee like it's poison. Lydia's nostrils flare. The tremor in her hand gives her away, not sorrow, but fury that her script isn't landing. Her lines were written for an audience willing to play along. I'm not. Don't dramatize, she hisses, lowering her voice for the first time. You've always been so ungrateful. You think independence means cruelty. I take a sip of my latte. No. I think independence means you stop weaponizing guilt. Lydia's eyes flash. You're twisting this again. Am I interrupt. You sent a mass email accusing me of stealing family funds. You've made it clear you're not interested in truth, just control. Courtney leans forward, voice high and brittle. We came here to fix things, but if you're going to keep punishing us, punishing the word tastes bitter. You've called me names, dragged my fiancé, and sabotaged my reputation. I'm not punishing anyone. I'm protecting myself. Lydia slams her palm on the table. The cups rattle. A collective intake of breath ripples through the cafe. Across the room, Lena steps closer. Everything okay here, Miss Whitaker? She asks, voice calm but firm. Her phone is angled subtly, red light blinking recording. We can call someone if you'd like. Lydia whirls toward her. Mind your own business. I meet Lena's gaze. We're fine, I say. Thank you. But she stays nearby, wiping the same countertop 3 times. Insurance in case things get uglier. Lydia regains her composure, with visible effort straightening her coat, smoothing her hair. You've embarrassed this family enough. I suggest you apologize publicly before there are consequences. Consequences, I repeat softly. You mean the ones you've already started. Her lips twitch. You don't want to make enemies, Riley. Reputation matters, mine or yours. Before she can answer, the door opens again. A gust of cold air slips through and Ben steps inside. He spots me, instantly scanning my face. He doesn't storm over, doesn't raise his voice. He just walks to the far wall and stands by the door, calm, silent, watchful. His presence is grounding, like gravity itself stepped into the room. Lydia notices him and something in her expression flickers. She can't manipulate what she can't isolate. This isn't over, she says quietly, gathering her purse. I know, I reply, but it's changing. Courtney rises, wiping at tears that glisten more than fall. You're cruel, Riley. You've always been jealous. You think because you make a few dollars and have a fiancé, you're better than us. I think I say for the first time I'm not afraid of you. She recoils as if slapped. Ben opens the door for them. They sweep past him, shoulders, rigid perfume trailing like a fog. Lydia doesn't look back. Courtney does. Her eyes are narrow now, not tearful. Enjoy your wedding, she says sweetly, if you still have one. The bell above the door jingles again, and they're gone. The silence afterward is deafening. Lena approaches, still holding her phone. You want me to keep this video? Yes, I say. Please, she nods. You did good. Didn't raise your voice once. Ben walks over, rests a hand on the back of my chair. You okay? I exhale slowly. Yeah, just tired. He squeezes my shoulder. You were steady. They wanted a show. You didn't give it to them. I glance at the table, the untouched coffees cooling fast. 3 cups, 3 ghosts. No, I murmur. I gave them the bill. 5 minutes later, my phone buzzes. I check the screen, expecting a text from Ben's mom, or maybe Grandma June. Instead, it's an email from our wedding venue, subject urgent update, facility closure body. Due to catastrophic plumbing issues, all events for the next 3 months are canceled. We apologize for the inconvenience. I stare at the message until the letters blur the cafe, suddenly too quiet, too bright. My fingers tighten around my cup. Outside, the snow starts falling again, soft and relentless, covering the footprints of the women who walked away. The HR office smells faintly of citrus cleaner and coffee. I sit across from Amelia, my boss, while a compliance rep types notes on a tablet. The fluorescent lights hum like restless bees. I open my laptop, angle the screen toward them, and scroll through the spreadsheet rows of transactions labeled by date, purpose, and recipient. No opinions. I say, my voice steady. Just facts. Every transfer, every note. I want you to have full transparency. Amelia, who once told me she grew up helping her parents run a small auto shop in Pueblo, studies the screen. You handled this like a professional, Riley, she says finally. Clear, factual adult. Relief unspools through me. For once, I'm not the problem someone else defined. She closes her tablet. We're implementing visitor screening effective immediately. No walk-ins without clearance. If anyone from your family shows up, security escorts them out. Understood. I nod. Thank you. Outside her office, the winter light feels a little softer. I've kept my job, kept my name intact. But family fire spreads in strange ways. It looks for new oxygen wherever it can find it. That afternoon, Rebecca calls. We've known each other since college. She handles PR for nonprofits and knows a smear campaign when she sees one. You need a strategy, she says. Don't respond emotionally. Respond structurally. Silence speaks louder when you're organized. I'm trying, I say. You're more than trying. You're documenting. Keep that up. And for what it's worth, I've seen your moms type 100 times. They weaponize reputation like it's currency. Later that night, Grandma June confirms it in her own gentle way. Your mother's been trading perception for power since she was your age, she tells me over tea. If people think she's right, she doesn't have to be. Then what happens when they stop thinking that, I ask? Grandma smiles, eyes glinting. She panics. It's not malice that keeps me awake that night, it's clarity. For 30 years, Lydia's managed the narrative. Now I'm writing my own. The next morning, I open my banking app and begin a cleanup. I file a harassment log documenting every unwanted contact. I call my bank to confirm my credit freeze, lock my accounts, disable every automatic transfer. No more mom's emergency withdrawals disguised as convenience. It feels like closing 100 tiny wounds. Ben watches from the kitchen, sipping his coffee. You're finally sealing the leaks, he says. I should have done it years ago. Then we start now, he replies. New chapter, new rules, wedding included. Wedding, I echo, still raw from the venue's cancellation. He grins. Wedding pivot plan. Smaller, truer hours. Who cares if it's in a vineyard or a backyard? We'll build something that can't be taken away. I stare at him, the simplicity of it cutting through the noise. For so long I've measured love in endurance. Maybe it's time to measure it in choice. By Thursday I learn how far Lydia's reach can extend. Rebecca calls, voice clipped. Your photographer emailed me. Your mom reached out pretending to be you, clarifying the family's wishes. Luckily, he called to confirm. I sit down hard. She's impersonating me. Not in writing, Rebecca says, but close enough. I told him to block her number. Hours later, the florist messages me. Riley, we're so sorry, but your mother indicated there's been a change of plans. I can almost hear Lydia's voice in the phrasing, controlled, polite, poisonous. By evening, it reaches Ben's world. His principal, Mr. Walters, calls him into the office. Your fiancé's family reached out, he says, wanted to warn me about her unprofessional behavior, said you might be reconsidering the marriage. Ben leans back in the chair, incredulous. Reconsidering? Absolutely not. Mr. Walters chuckles. Didn't think so. For the record, I told her public education values fairness, and that gossip's not curriculum here. When Ben tells me, I laugh for the first time all week. The sound feels foreign and freeing, but the laughter fades quickly. Because if Lydia's willing to infiltrate my work, my wedding, and now Ben's job, there's no telling what's next. That night, I sit at the kitchen table, surrounded by documents, copies of the spreadsheet, screenshots of messages, written logs. It looks less like a family scrapbook and more like evidence. And maybe that's what it is, proof that I've been funding a lie built on guilt. A knock startles me. 3 soft taps deliberate. I glance at the clock, 8:42 p.m. Through the peephole, I see my dad. Alone. I open the door cautiously. He looks older than I remember, shoulders slumped under his winter coat, a manila folder clutched in one hand. "Can I come in?" he asks quietly. Ben moves to stand, but I shake my head. It's okay. Dad steps inside, removing his hat. The silence stretches as he takes in the tidy apartment, the stack of papers on the table, the faint hum of the heater. "I didn't know where else to go," he says finally. "You found me," I say. "That's a start." He nods, then holds out the folder. "I found something in the desk. Your mother doesn't know yet." I hesitate before taking it. The paper inside smells faintly of dust and perfume. "What is it?" "Letters," he says. "Notes she kept. I thought they were grocery lists until I looked closer." He meets my eyes, his own rimmed red. "You need to see what she's been writing about you." The folder feels heavier than it should. I set it on the table but don't open it yet. Dad looks toward the door, then back at me. "Riley," he says softly. "I'm sorry I didn't stop any of this sooner." I want to tell him it's okay, that I understand, but the words catch in my throat. Because part of me still remembers every time he said nothing while she cut me down. Ben clears his throat gently. "Would you like coffee?" Dad nods. "Please." As Ben moves to the kitchen, I finally flip the folder open. Inside are several sheets of lined paper, my mother's neat handwriting looping across the page. At the top of one list, I see it, my name underlined twice. And below it in tidy bullet points, car payment, insurance, tuition, emergency fund, leverage. Leverage. My father stares at the word color draining from his face. I think he whispers she's been keeping a ledger too. The room goes so quiet I can hear the furnace kick on. Somewhere in the distance, a car door slams. A dog barks. Life goes on. But in this apartment, everything just changed. The folder lies open on my kitchen table like a confession. Inside, pages filled with my mother's perfect handwriting. No margin smudges. No hesitation marks, just crisp, deliberate loops. Each line item reads like an autopsy of generosity. March, Riley pays Lexus insurance. June, Riley covers knee deductible. August, Riley transfers funds for Courtney's prep. Next to each entry in parentheses, she's written one word: expected. It takes me a moment to understand. She'd built my kindness into her budget. Further down, a separate page labeled household forecast lists. Riley inflow, $1 and $200 monthly, right under Dad's pension and Evan's occasional contributions. I flip to the back. There's an old printed email chain from her book club friend Anne. The subject line reads, how do you keep adult kids helping?" Lydia's reply makes my stomach twist. "You just have to know how to motivate Riley. She's sensitive. Guilt works faster than logic." Dad sits across from me, rubbing his temple with 2 fingers. He looks like he's aged 5 years in one night. "I didn't sign any of this," he says, voice barely audible. "No," I say. "But you benefited from it." He nods slowly, eyes fixed on the papers. "I know." I wait. There's no anger left, only exhaustion. After a long pause, he straightens, jaw set with quiet resolve. "I'm going back to work. Peterson Engineering has an opening for a project consultant. I can handle that." "You don't have to." "I do," he interrupts, voice firm. "I need to pay for my own life again. For once." He hesitates, then adds, "If you want me to talk to your HR department to confirm none of that email garbage she sent is true, I will." It's a generous offer, one that might have meant the world to me years ago. Now, I just shake my head. I don't need that, Dad. I just need consistency. His eyes glisten. "You'll have it." When he leaves, I sit alone with the folder, its contents humming with betrayal. Proof she saw me not as a daughter, but as a revenue stream. My phone vibrates. Evan. The text reads, "I didn't realize. Send total with interest." I stare at the message. 3 years of dismissiveness, competition, casual cruelty, and now this olive branch typed in lowercase letters. Trap or turning point, I can't tell. I screenshot the message, archive it. I'll decide later. The next blow comes 2 days later, wrapped in perfect lighting and fake compassion. Courtney uploads a video to her social channels, tearful face, shaky voice, emotional background music. The caption reads, "When family turns on family, who protects the elders?" She talks about neglect, about a granddaughter abandoning her aging grandmother to prove a point. She never says my name, but the hashtags, hashtag family duty, be kind, hashtag elder care, awareness, make it obvious. Within hours, the comments explode. How could anyone treat their grandma like that? Money-hungry millennials classic. She'll regret this one day. I scroll until the bile rises. Then I call Grandma June. She answers on the second ring, her voice calm as ever. "I was wondering when you'd call. You've seen it." "Oh, everyone's seen it," she says dryly. "Courtney's a terrible actress." I almost laugh. Almost. "It's cruel. It's desperate," she corrects. "She's following your mother's playbook, and people who lie that loudly are scared." I want to set the record straight, I say. But not in the comments section. Something cleaner, public but dignified. There's a pause on the line. "You have my consent, sweetheart," Grandma says finally. "Say what needs saying, but wait for the right stage." Her trust steadies me. I start drafting a brief statement, factual and kind, the way Rebecca taught me. All family members are safe and supported. False narratives harm everyone involved. The truth will surface in time. I don't post it yet. Timing, as Grandma says, is everything. Meanwhile, the ripples keep spreading. My florist cancels too much stress. The DJ pulls out, citing brand reputation. Every contract clause becomes a weapon. I stop keeping track of how many times I hear, "Sorry, but your mother called us." Rebecca calls that evening voice brisk. "You holding up?" "Barely," I admit. "Well, the universe just handed you a gift." "What kind of gift?" "My client's vineyard outside Boulder. Their daughter's wedding was last weekend. They had a Friday sunset slot open, same date as yours. The owner's sympathetic. Her own family imploded over money last year. She said she'll waive half the deposit if you want it." For a second, I can't breathe. The same date, the exact one, Rebecca says. It's almost poetic. I look around my apartment, boxes of invitations stacked against the wall, half a wedding unraveling in slow motion, and now a chance to reclaim it, to write a new version that isn't defined by sabotage or apology. When do I have to decide, I ask. "Tomorrow morning," she says. She'll hold it for 24 hours. After we hang up, I walk to the window. Snow flurries catch the city lights, turning Denver into a slow-falling constellation. Somewhere out there, Lydia is probably celebrating another small victory. Courtney's followers are sharing her video. Evan's deciding whether I'm worth a check. But in this quiet, I feel something shift, a slow recalibration. They're playing defense now, and I'm not running anymore. I text Ben, possible new venue, vineyard, sunset, want to go see it. His reply is immediate, "Only if we bring Grandma." I laugh, the sound startling in its ease. Then I glance back at the folder on the table. The evidence that once broke my heart. Now it's just paper, receipts, proof that I once funded everyone else's life and that from here on out I'll be funding my own. Outside, the snow stops, leaving the night crisp and still. The vineyard waits, and this time, the story will start on my terms. The vineyard sits on a hillside outside Boulder, its rows of grapevines still bare from winter stretching into soft gold light. When we first drive up, I don't expect the wave of emotion that hits me. Relief, disbelief, and something close to gratitude. After months of chaos, this feels like solid ground. The air smells like earth and cedar barrels. The small stone building glows like a secret kept safe. We have 3 weeks to turn it into a wedding. 3 weeks and a community that refuses to let us fail. Ben's colleagues show up with tool belts and folding tables, joking that history teachers build civilizations, too. My agency teammates take over signage, turning our color palette into art that makes the vineyard look like a high-end campaign shoot. Lena, the cafe barista who recorded the ambush, connects me with her cousin, a part-time DJ, who agrees to work for cost. "You already paid enough for peace," she tells me. The whole scene feels impossibly American, in the best way, people pooling effort instead of money, kindness, traded instead of control. The week before the wedding, I sit at our kitchen table with my laptop open, typing the final set of invitations. Only a few need special attention. I write Lydia and Courtney's by hand, careful, deliberate script, each envelope holding both an olive branch and a shield. "You are welcome to attend our wedding under these conditions. Respect our boundaries. Cause no disruption. Make no demands." These terms are non-negotiable. It's not anger that drives the words, it's clarity. If they come as guests, not tyrants. Dad's invitation doesn't need conditions. He's already proven what I needed to see. The night before, he stopped by unannounced, a small envelope and a folded recipe card in his hand. "From your grandmother," he said, handing it to me. Inside, the familiar slanted handwriting read, "Apple Crisp, for new beginnings." Beneath it was a check not large but significant. The memo line read, "Repayment round 1. I know it doesn't fix everything," he said, voice thick. "But I want you to know I mean it." "You already do," I told him. "But thank you." He nodded once, awkwardly proud. "See you tomorrow, kiddo." Now, as sunlight floods the vineyard, that check sits safely in my purse, a symbol not of debt but of direction. Evan arrives early the morning of the ceremony, unexpected but calm. He looks different, less curated, more human. He greets Ben, first shakes his hand, then turns to me. Before anything he says, pulling an envelope from his coat, "I owe you this." Inside is a cashier's check for the exact amount of his loan, plus interest rounded up. My breath catches. "Evan." He holds up a hand. "I know I was awful to you. I told myself it was competition, but it was really insecurity. I saw how Mom used you, and instead of helping, I let her. I'm done doing that." For a long second, I can't speak. Finally, I manage. "Thank you." He shifts, uncomfortable. "I've also taken over Dad's physical therapy bills. I should have done that a year ago. It's not performative, it's sincere. I can see it in his posture, the way his voice catches when he mentions Dad." "You really are growing up," I say, smiling faintly. He laughs. "Took me 30 years. When he leaves to help the DJ with cables, I stand there for a moment, taking it all in. The smell of oak, the hum of preparation, the sound of my own life rebuilding in quiet, practical steps. Rebecca arrives soon after, clipboard in hand, managing logistics with the precision of a field commander. "We've got 82 guests confirmed, and weather says mild with clouds," she says. Honestly, it's shaping up to be perfect. For the first time in months, I believe her. Ben appears behind her jacket, off sleeves rolled up. The tables are done. The lights are working. We might actually pull this off. I grin. Of course we are. As the afternoon deepens, guests begin to arrive, colleagues, church friends, neighbors, who've seen the whole storm unfold. The vineyard glows under soft strings of Edison bulbs, the hills turning amber under the lowering sun. Even Grandma June looks radiant, seated near the aisle with her cane and her quiet smile. For a brief, miraculous stretch of time, everything feels right. The chaos, the betrayal, the public humiliation, it all recedes. What remains is a network of people who showed up not for gossip, but for love. Then 30 minutes before the ceremony, the vineyard manager comes jogging across the lawn, her expression tight. "Riley," she says, breathless. "We've got a problem." Ben and I exchange a look. "What kind of problem?" "There's a man at the gate, says he's with the county inspection office. Claims there's been a complaint about your event, something about safety violations, overcrowding, and lack of permits. My stomach drops. A complaint from who? She shakes her head. Anonymous, but he's got a clipboard badge, the works. Wants to shut us down until he verifies occupancy. Guests murmur behind us, sensing the tension. Rebecca appears instantly, phone already in hand. I'll handle him, she says. But the manager shakes her head. He's insisting on speaking to the event coordinator. That's you, Riley. Ben steps closer, his voice low. This has your mother written all over it. I force myself to inhale slow and deep. Maybe, maybe not. Either way, I'm not running. Rebecca touches my arm. We'll back you up. Don't let him see you rattled. As I start toward the entrance, the wind shifts, carrying the scent of grapes and candle wax. I glance toward the parking area, and there at the edge of the drive, I see a familiar silver Lexus idling. My pulse spikes. Lydia's car. Of course. The inspector's voice carries across the gravel. Ma'am, I'm going to need to see your event permits. I square my shoulders, lift my chin, and step forward. You'll get them, I say evenly. Every last one. Behind me, the string lights flicker in the wind, glowing like defiance itself. The inspector's boots crunch over gravel as he approaches the barn doors, clipboard in hand. Ma'am, he says, squinting at the crowd beyond me. We've had a complaint about your event. Unpermitted structure. Use overcrowding, possible alcohol violations. His tone isn't hostile, just weary, like he's done this dance before. I smile, calm, deliberate. Of course. Everything's in order. I hand him a slim folder from the check-in table. Inside, event permit, insurance certificate, guest list. Capped at 85, all signatures clear and recent. The vineyard manager stands beside me, nodding along. He flips through the papers, scanning. Looks fine. It should, I say, matching his evenness. We filed everything a week ago with the county clerk. My friend works there. The inspector glances up, a flicker of amusement crossing his face. Sounds like someone doesn't like you much. Not my first time, I reply. He hands the papers back, signs the log sheet, and mutters, I'll note the complaint as unfounded. Tell your anonymous tipster they wasted their afternoon. As he leaves, the vineyard manager exhales. You handled that beautifully. Practice, I say. By the time I return to the courtyard, the sunset has painted the vines copper. Guests murmur about the interruption, half curious, half concerned, but Rebecca smooths it over with the ease of a professional. The music resumes, soft jazz melting into golden light. I catch a glimpse of Lydia near the back, dressed in navy, a glass of champagne trembling slightly in her hand. Courtney hovers beside her, eyes darting between guests, like she's monitoring reactions. Ben squeezes my hand. Crisis averted. For now. We move through the ceremony like sunlight through water vows, laughter, applause, that fragile thread of peace I've fought months to reclaim. When the toast begins, Rebecca clinks her glass. To community, she says, to resilience, and to the people who learn to stand tall without stepping on anyone else. Cheers ripple across the courtyard. I raise my glass but spot movement near the stage. Lydia. She's walking toward the mic. A hush follows her like a shadow. The DJ hesitates, lowering the music. She reaches the microphone and clears her throat, already wearing her martyr's half-smile. Ben tenses beside me. I touch his wrist. It's okay, I whisper. Let her. I step forward, motioning for quiet. Then, instead of stopping her, I hold out my hand for the mic. You have something to say. Her eyes widen, surprised by the permission. Around us, guests shift, anticipating conflict. Cameras hover. Lydia straightens her shoulders, visibly weighing whether to retreat. She doesn't. I just wanted to say, she begins, voice trembling, that families go through difficult times, misunderstandings, and sometimes I take the mic back gently. Thank you, Mom. You're right. Families do go through things, but misunderstandings end when truth begins. The air tightens, silent except for the faint hum of the speakers. Let me tell you mine. I continue steady and clear. 3 years, $41,980. Money I gave to help with car leases, medical deductibles, student loans, bar exam prep family needs. No interest, no repayment plans, just faith. I paused, scanning the crowd. Then, when I finally said no, my name went out in an email calling me selfish, disloyal, a thief. Lydia's color drains. Riley, this isn't the time, it's exactly the time. Rebecca nods toward the barn wall, and the portable projector flickers to life. My agency team, bless them, had set it up for photos earlier. Now the screen shows rows of numbers, blurred names but legible amounts. Bank transactions with matching notes. Car payment. Mom. Loan payoff. Evan. Prep course. Courtney. Gasps ripple through the guests. Lydia's jaw tightens. Courtney looks like she might faint. Every line is verified, I say quietly. I've redacted details because this isn't about shame. It's about ownership. Then Grandma June's voice carries across the space, soft but firm. We love family, but love isn't leverage. Her words hit harder than anything I could have said. The crowd murmurs assent, low and honest. I catch a glimpse of Dad wiping his eyes near the front row. I turn back to the projection and click one final file, a scanned page from Lydia's folder. Her handwriting fills the screen, graceful looping, unmistakable. The title reads, Household Forecast. Under monthly inflows, one line gleams like a blade. Riley's duty. $1,200. A collective gasp breaks the silence. Lydia's hand flies to her mouth. Courtney stares, stunned. This, I say softly, is what happens when giving turns into expectation, when generosity becomes obligation, when love turns into math. I let the words settle, the sunlight slanting over the vines like judgment. Lydia opens her mouth, but no sound comes. For the first time in my life, she looks small, like the walls she built are folding inward. I step closer, lower the mic. I don't hate you, Mom. I just stopped funding the version of me you wanted, the one who existed only to make you comfortable. A long pause. Somewhere near the back, someone claps, once hesitant, testing. Then another follows. Then another. The sound grows steady and rising until it fills the vineyard. Applause. Not the polite kind, but the raw, relieved kind that sounds like release. I turn off the mic. The feedback hum dies. Lydia stands, frozen eyes downcast, the navy fabric of her dress fluttering in the wind. Courtney touches her arm, but she doesn't move. The crowd isn't booing. No one's whispering. They're clapping. For the truth. For the boundary. For the quiet, ordinary courage it took to survive my own family. I look out over the vineyard, the sunset bleeding across the horizon, and realize the applause isn't about victory. It's about freedom. Lydia lowers her eyes, shoulders trembling, not with rage, but with recognition. For the first time in my life, my mother has nothing left to say. The vineyard emptied out slowly that night, guests lingering in small, reverent clusters. No one mentioned the projection directly. They didn't have to. The truth had filled the space like sunlight, impossible to unsee. In the quiet after, as Ben and I helped gather stray glasses, Dad approached, his hands shoved deep in his jacket pockets. He cleared his throat. You got a minute? I nodded, bracing myself, but his voice was calm. I've been thinking about repayment. My share of the total. I know what I owe. I shook my head. Dad, that's not... He lifted a hand. I want to. Not out of guilt, out of respect. We sat at one of the now empty tables, string lights still glowing above. On a napkin, I wrote out a simple plan, 6 months modest installments, no interest. He insisted on signing it. Paper makes it real, he said. And this time, I want things to be real. When he left, I watched him cross the gravel lot, under the fading light, his shoulders straighter than I'd seen them in years. Evan's turn came next. He reached out the following week asking if he could talk at our church's young adult night about financial boundaries and family expectations. I didn't believe him at first, but he showed up early wearing a simple button-down instead of the usual brand name armor. When he took the stage, the room fell silent. I'm not an expert, he began, rubbing the back of his neck. But I benefited from a system that drained someone I love. I thought it was normal. I was wrong. His voice caught halfway through, and for once he didn't hide it. The applause afterward wasn't thunderous, just sincere. A few people came up to me after quietly saying thank you. Boundaries had turned into testimony. Courtney's reckoning arrived more publicly. Within days of the vineyard, 2 brands pulled their sponsorships. Her follower count dipped by thousands. Then the cafe video leaked. Lena had saved it for safety. But someone posted a clip with the caption, "The quiet power of saying no." It showed me sliding the coffee across the table saying, "This is the last bill I'll ever pay for you." No raised voice, no dramatics, just calm finality. It spread faster than any smear Lydia ever wrote. Comment sections filled with people calling it cathartic brave American. Within a week, #LastBill trended across platforms. News outlets did short lifestyle segments about the rise of boundary culture. It was absurd and surreal, but part of me smiled. If my humiliation had gone public, at least my peace could too. I didn't sue my mother for defamation. I didn't send cease and desist letters or parade the IOUs through court. I'd already won by refusing to play her game. Revenge would have been easy, but revenge doesn't rebuild, it only burns. Instead, I wrote one letter. "Mom, I forgive you. Future contact is welcome if it's respectful and non-financial. Riley." No embellishments, no postscript, just terms. A week later, I dropped it in the mail. My hands didn't shake. Life began to settle into a rhythm that felt sustainable, not defensive. Ben and I moved into a brick duplex near the foothills, small but ours. My company promoted me again, not for surviving drama, but for leading a new campaign on brand integrity. Rebecca helped formalize my documentation into a workshop series. Even Grandma June joined one of the sessions, beaming as she told a crowd of nonprofit workers, "Boundaries are the purest form of love there is." The small things became sacred again. Quiet mornings with coffee, neighborhood potlucks, the smell of cinnamon from Dad's apple crisp recipe baking in our oven. Freedom didn't feel loud or cinematic. It felt like silence that didn't hurt. And that, I realized, was the heart of it. Personal freedom wasn't about cutting people out. It was about choosing peace without permission. Resilience wasn't about never falling apart. It was about refusing to stay broken. Community wasn't a word on a mission statement. It was the people who held the line with me when I finally stood up straight. Weeks later, a small box arrived in the mail, postmarked Arvada, Lydia's handwriting neat as ever across the label. I set it on the kitchen counter and stared at it for a long time before opening it. Inside was a single key attached to a worn paper tag. Beneath it, a folded note. "If you must keep records," it read, "keep all of them. No apology, no explanation, just that one line." Ben glanced up from the stove. "What's that?" I turned the key over in my palm, the metal catching the light. "A breadcrumb," I said quietly. He frowned. "You think it's safe?" I echoed. "Probably not, but honest. Maybe." I slipped the key into a drawer beside my ledger and closed it gently. Some doors I knew were meant to be opened slowly. Outside, evening settled over the hills, the same soft amber that had wrapped the vineyard the day everything changed. I stood at the window, breathing in the quiet, aware that peace didn't erase history, it reframed it. Some debts are financial, some are emotional, and some finally are paid in full. The storage unit smells faintly of dust and cedar, the kind of place where time gathers in boxes. I stand in the narrow aisle between stacks of cardboard, the key Lydia mailed me cool against my palm. It turns in the lock with a click that sounds too ordinary for what it opens. Inside are rows of neatly labeled bins, holidays, vacations, misc family. It's the archive of a woman obsessed with appearances. I start with the first box, lifting the lid carefully. Photos spill out like static memories. Christmas mornings, beach trips, graduations. In almost every one I'm visible only on the edge of the frame, half a smile, a cropped arm, the quiet one holding the camera. Proof, if anyone needed it, of how easily I was trimmed from the narrative. Near the bottom of the box, an envelope catches my eye. Cream stationery, sealed but unmailed. I open it slowly, and my own name stares back from a stack of thank you notes, written in Lydia's careful cursive. Dear Riley, thank you for covering the car payment this month. Dear Riley, we couldn't have managed the medical bill without you. Dear Riley, we'll pay you back soon, promise. Every line polite, restrained, unsent. Proof of knowledge, proof of choice. She knew what I gave. She just chose silence instead of acknowledgement. I sit on the cold concrete floor for a long time holding those letters. It doesn't hurt the way I thought it would. It just feels finished. Weeks later, I meet her on a park bench overlooking Sloan's Lake. She's smaller than I remember, wrapped in a gray coat, hands clasped around a paper cup. The winter sun catches the silver in her hair, softening the sharp edges I used to brace for. Thank you for coming, she says quietly. I nod. You sent me the key. I thought you should see the truth for yourself. I did. She exhales, watching a pair of geese skim the water. My mother raised me on control. She called it discipline, I called it love. I guess I passed that down. Her words hang there, fragile as ice. It's not an apology, it's not even a confession, but it's real. The closest thing to honesty we've ever shared. I'm not asking you to fix it, I say. I just need to live without owing anyone for breathing. She nods, once eyes glistening. That's fair. We sit in silence until the sun dips low gold, spilling across the lake. When I stand, she doesn't reach for me. She just whispers, "Be happy, Riley." It's not closure, not entirely, but it's something she can own and something I can let be. Life after the reckoning unfolds in softer tones. Ben and I host Sunday potlucks at our little brick house, the table crowded with mismatched chairs and laughter. Grandma June always brings her apple crisp, the same recipe Dad first handed me for new beginnings. It's become tradition, our quiet ritual of sweetness after everything sour. At work, I notice a younger coworker lingering after meetings, nervous, overworked, the same exhausted smile I once wore. One day she blurts, "My parents keep asking for money for my brother's business. I can't say no." I slide a copy of Boundaries across her desk, a post-it note tucked inside. Love isn't leverage. She reads the inscription and tears up. The cycle bends just a little in a better direction. On my bookshelf at home sits the binder that once held my family's transactions. I've relabeled it in gold marker past. Inside are the receipts, the ledgers, the IOUs kept, not for vengeance, but for record. Because truth deserves a home even when it's no longer needed. Beside it rests a new album. The first page holds a photo of the vineyard at sunset, Ben's arm around me, light blooming across our faces. For once I'm centered in every frame by choice, not permission. Each page after it waits, empty, an invitation instead of an expectation. Sometimes at night, when the house is quiet and the lights hum softly, I think about how close I came to disappearing into other people's comfort. How easy it would have been to stay small. But I didn't. I didn't burn the house down. I flipped the breakers and walked outside. In the quiet night air, my life finally runs on my own power. And with that final breath of independence, Riley's story closes where it began, in quiet strength and self-respect. If this story resonated with you, let us know your thoughts below. Share your own turning points or the moments you finally took back your power. We read every comment, and your stories matter here. Don't forget to subscribe for more. Thank you for listening. This has been a story from Revenge Hour. We'll see you next time.